Welcome to the Better Selling Through Storytelling Method Masterclass. I'm honored to have my good friend and colleague, Glenn Hemanes, with me today. Glenn has an amazing career from his days at Apple Computer, working with big brands like Coca-Cola, creating not just visual images, but visual images that give our clients the wow factor. And the wow factor is what you want to have, not only from what you're saying, but what images you are showing. And much like in the fashion industry, which is where I had come from, you would see sometimes celebrities on the red carpet, and somebody would say, "Oh God, Jennifer Aniston looks great in that dress." And then sometimes you'd see a comment like, "Oh, I think the dress is wearing the celebrity." And so that very similar analogy in how your visual images, your slides that you're using when you present anything, they either complement what you're saying, enhance it if you're using Glenn, or they take away from you. And people are so into your slides that they're distracted by what you say. And one of the biggest mistakes we're going to cover today that you see time and again is too many words on a slide. And the real kiss of death, everybody, reading the words on your slide. We all know how to read. The last thing we want is someone reading to us when we're giving a presentation. So if you've made these mistakes, who are currently making these mistakes, please stop. There's no need to do that anymore. So in the first 5 minutes, look at all the value you've gotten. A free sneak peek of my book and 2 of the big mistakes that people are making. Too many words on a slide and reading. Thank you for the applause and the silence. I can appreciate it. I see it doing that. So let's get right to it as far as what other things we're going to share and show you today. So you should be able to see my screen. And again, if you want a free sneak peek of the secrets in better selling through storytelling, text this number 66866 to the word pitch with a P, and you'll get that. So you can see right off the bat, a visual image here is the book cover. A book cover, like the slides that Glenn creates, all take in a lot of different visual images. So a book cover has to pull people in. And you'll notice here how the ladder looks 3-dimensional based on the shadowing. Also, colors are a big part of your brand. Glenn, I would love you to comment on what goes into creating a logo, creating colors for someone's brand, and what mistakes you might see that people don't think about.
Okay. Yeah, there's a few things to unpack there. First of all, thank you, John, for the introductions and for the opportunity. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you, something that we talk about all the time. So it's nice to have a little bit of an audience. Yeah, I think that there's many facets to having a brand and then communicating that brand in various different ways. So book covers or slides. There are things that take into consideration. So you have your color palette. So you have a very nice, concise, like pretty much you have 3 colors that are the primary colors of this. So by having a limited color palette, you create a theme. So your theme very much is the grays, the blacks, and of course that very green, blue-green kind of color, which is one of my favorite colors. Having a book cover that has like dimension to it keeps people, it's one of those elements that keep people engaged. When I talk about doing presentation decks and crafting it, it's all about keeping people engaged on several different levels. So I don't want to go too far on that yet, but as far as, incorporating the branding in with your book cover, having a visual image that keeps people engaged, having the color, and having a font style are the 3 primary things that are going to be reflected in your book. And then it is also reflected in any other marketing material that people are going to see.
And if anybody goes to my website, which is my name, johnlivesay.com, you will see the design that Glenn created that completely ties in with the colors and the fonts that match the book. That's a very important thing to take away. If you're taking notes, write this down. Your brand must be consistent across all platforms, whether it's a book, a website, a LinkedIn profile, anything you put out into the world so that people instantly recognize the Coca-Cola brand. for reasons that we know that font, we know that color red, all of that, it continues. So let's talk
Yeah.
about another thing that you helped me with, which is my TEDx Talk. Now, I have a story that I open my TEDx Talk with, as well as my book, where I talk about being 18 years old and being a lifeguard. That photo did not exist of me that I could find. So Glenn, and my mom is watching this, so she'll be able to tell us by thumbs up or thumbs down whether she
Oh
thinks
boy.
this is what I look like when I was 18. I thought it sure came pretty close. And then I literally describe in my talk, picture this, I'm 18 years old, sitting on my lifeguard perch. I've got mirror sunglasses on my face, zinc oxide on my nose, and a whistle in my mouth. You can see how Glenn created this image of someone who had a face structure similar to mine. And tell us the secret of what you did for the zinc oxide.
Well, yeah, I looked up several images to try to find as close as possible to the way you described yourself. And he didn't have any on his nose, any sunscreen. And it just matter it was photoshopped. I mean, I use a lot of Photoshop, so it
Yeah,
was a matter of applying it. And I want to say that I think I actually I don't know if I put it on my own nose or I wanted to make sure it actually looked like it was applied and not just like a white
right.
watch. And so there is some translucency in it, and may or may not be able to see it here, but when it's blown up on stage, those kind of details are really
Mm-hmm.
important to make sure that comes across, that it sells and doesn't distract. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, the other element is then when you're giving a talk, and especially if it's virtual like this, you need to have some kind of animation going on so that people's eyes keep looking at it and they're not going to get distracted. So during this particular story that I talk about a girl jumping off the high dive, which I think was her first time doing it, and that she suddenly goes underwater, and I start counting 5 seconds, 6 seconds, and that's 2 seconds too long. The fact that you were able to have this pop up and so enhances the drama of the story, because we literally see how fast a second goes.
Yeah.
This kind of animation is something I don't see any other speakers using. And I think it's a big part of why Coca-Cola, who has all the accesses to all the resources possible, decided to hire you for this expertise, because they had seen this in action, literally. And they said, that's great. That really enhances your story. Who did that for you? So tell us where you learned how to do this.
um yeah, that was quite an opportunity. That was fantastic. Where I learned, I think that if without tracking too far back, me as an artist, as a designer, I've always tried to make the world make sense to myself. And so
Hmm.
I'm in a process of always translating things for myself. And what I discovered is that as I make things make sense to myself, it actually helps other people understand. So I
Hmm.
use, my imagination. I think about, like, when you're telling a story, my head gets filled with images, and I think, like, this is something that I'm thinking of, in the hopes that other people are thinking of the same thing. So having something there that, like, immediately goes right to somebody's imagination is the key. And the shorter that distance, the better, between them thinking of it and actually seeing
Mm, I love it.
it.
Now, I recently engaged your work again because I had a virtual keynote coming up from a $1 billion high-tech healthcare company, and I wanted something customized that would relate to everybody feeling like they were in quarantine. So I picked the clip from Tom Hanks' Castaway movie. And so I was able to open my talk after my initial story saying, how many of you feel like this? You're on this isolated island and you're trying to get your technology to work or something else to work. And, God forbid your Apple computer goes down, the Apple stores are closed. And we get frustrated just like Tom Hanks. And we just want to throw it all away. So, sometimes out of this disruption, innovation happens. And this is where your real magic comes in. We all can relate to what it feels like to be that frustrated. You have the Wilson ball animate onto the movie clip. People were blown away. That's unexpected. And it pulls them in even more. Speak to how you came up with that.
Mm. Well, It's interesting you touched on the unexpected part, and I
Hmm.
think that's the other part that's really kind of fun to play with. I try to make every slide not like the last. I like to
Mm.
mix it up. There's a balance between having continuity to make sure that it looks like it's following the same brand, the same thought. Um, the same theme, but then there's also, you want to mix in, or I try to mix in as much kind of unexpected things. So having the ball come in at the end was a fun little, like, I thought of it, and then always the challenge is whether or not I can actually, pull it off. And a
Mm.
lot of times, I'd say like 90% of the time, the graphics and the effects that I create, I try to keep them within Keynote or PowerPoint. And so it was a PowerPoint effect, and I was able just to use this animation in with the putting the ball in, having it roll in, and of course it's a matter of timing and trying to
Oh,
figure all
the
that out.
timing is everything because
Yeah,
we saw him put the bloody hand on the ball, and then I, as the speaker, have the control of when as I'm speaking, that innovation, that disruption becomes innovation,
yeah.
and like, oh my God, eh, so that's not just a movie clip. That really brings it to life. Now, the other thing I talk about, and that people really remember from my talks, are this concept of we have a choice. Do we want to be an ostrich and bury our head in the sand and try to forget what's going on and just let me know when it's all over? And you can see how that animation was, the ostrich was actually moving. And then, or do we want to be like the peacock? And the peacock makes itself bigger when a predator comes and steps up to the plate. And so this choice of, do I want to be an ostrich or a peacock? Again, it's not just a photo of the peacock fully open. We're watching it open as I speak. So that combination, and I speak to the timing of the animation, and that's what makes it all work. So what are your thoughts when you hear my thought process around how I time my speaking to your animation?
I love that you did that, because actually I didn't see after we've gone back and forth and putting it together, but
Right.
actually you delivering that part of it. So that was great, because yeah, the ostrich was, it was kind of an unexpected thing that the ostrich was one, wasn't a just a still graphic, but
Mm-hmm.
actually moved its head out of the way, and that was fun how you incorporated that. I just to give a little backstory, I always had this little prop here. I started when slides were like this, so I'm dating myself. But there was a revolution that happened when the digital projector came in, when people were able to actually show things directly from the computer instead of
Mm-hmm.
having it be a static slide.
Right.
And so I try to really take advantage of the opportunity that we're basically working with multimedia platforms. We're working with something that has motion and animation and music, sound effects, all these type of things at our disposal. And it's really the art is in how it's used, and
Mm,
how it helps enhance the story and the message.
got it. Love that. All right. So once we, let's watch it again. It's so good. I just love it. It's one of my favorite things you've done. Boom.
Thank you.
I like the fact that the color of the peacock matches your color scheme.
Yeah. Yes. Well, Glenn takes a lot of details into consideration. We found the perfect peacock for my brand.
Thanks, Paul.
um, so we talked about some of the big mistakes people make when they present. Too many words on a slide, and also reading from the slide. So the big problem that I'm solving for people who have to sell themselves or sell a product or service is this old way of thinking about yourself. This concept of, when people get to know, like, and trust you, then they want to work with you, hire you, etc. And when Glenn and I were discussing this concept and the problem, I said, Glenn, I've come up with this premise that the order is completely wrong. And so watch what Glenn did. I said, it's not about getting people to know, like, and trust you, because what that does is if people think, oh, you have to know me first, then let me vomit a bunch of information on you and dump a bunch of stats. So you know me, you know my company, and that's not at all how people want to relate to you or buy from you. So I said, the order's wrong. We need to flip it. So he literally flips it for me. And I said, we start at the gut level, the trust factor, that the handshake came about to show we didn't have a weapon in our hand. So we need to build trust through social proof, eye contact, all that good stuff. And then it goes to the heart. Do I like you? That's where empathy comes in. And then finally, it goes to the head, where people are thinking, will this work for me? If you're going to tell a story, which is my whole premise, the better you tell stories, the better success you have in your career. The people need to see themselves in your story. That's the question they're asking themselves. Will this work for me? If you've described a story of someone you've helped through your product, your service, then they see themselves in the story and they have that answered. So Glenn, speak to us about how you came up with these icons, the colors, all of that. As you can see, because you've never heard me give the talk using your graphics, I described what I was going to say, and then you created this. So you can see what a collaborative process it is to create visuals that match your speaking topic and message.
Yeah, it is, and I love the way your mind works, is you're always thinking of these things and how to re-message and explain things, and it's great, and that's why I love working with you. Um, the the graphics that I create, a lot, this particular slide was one that I think I pulled from the investor decks that I create. A lot of investor decks need to be very short and to the point. People need to see things, use a lot of iconography, so people get it and understand it right away. So that was the inspiration for this slide. It was really to come up with icons that I felt were that were appropriate for the particular words that we were using to describe this process.
And obviously red for the heart makes
Yep.
people, it's all subliminal, but it all works and registers.
Yeah, right.
Now this particular visual is something that I talk about, and you'll see it in the sneak PDF. I see some people have joined us. So for those new people, I have a gift for you. You don't have to stay to the end. Of course, we love it if you do. But take out your phone, text this number, 66866, and the word pitch, P-I-T-C-H. You get a free PDF of some of the secrets in better selling through storytelling. And this is one of the big ones. Where do people see you on this ladder? A lot of salespeople are always worried about, well, this person's 90% likely to buy from me, 50%, or maybe 20%, but nobody thinks of themselves as a percentage. So again, flipping the script, we need to start showing empathy. And where do people see us on this ladder? Are we invisible? They've never heard of us? Are we insignificant, which is even worse? Or are we stuck at this interesting rung of the ladder? How many of you have had conversations with clients, just post it in the chat really quick, where they go, oh, I'm interested, send me information. And then you just have this endless loop of people saying they're interested and they never take any action. I describe this as being stuck at the friend zone at work with people. So yeah, Harry's saying, yep, he knows what that feels like. Neil likes the peacock, I love it. Yeah, this concept of I'm stuck at the friend zone at work. People are interested, and yet that's only halfway up the ladder. We need to say or do something that intrigues them enough to want to know more, even in a good elevator pitch. And finally, when you're at the top of this is where you become irresistible, and these are your best clients. They share information. They talk about you to people. Here's the secret. If you're taking notes, write this down. The better you tell a story, the better other people will share your story. And that's where you have them at your irresistible rung of the ladder. So I'm checking the chat now. I don't check it every 5 minutes. So if you have any questions about what we've covered for either Glenn or for me, please post them in the chat and we will answer them because this is an interactive class. All right. And Glenn, you can help me by checking the chat as well, if you don't mind.
No problem.
All right. So next up is this concept of what happens when you bore people. You have no emotional connection. And I tell people they need to stack their moments of certainty. And the best way to do that is through a story. So if you think of Lady Gaga, she certainly resonates confidence. And so here's an exercise for everybody to do. You got a piece of paper. Write down 2 or 3 times in your life when you knew you nailed something. You got a job offer, you got a sale, you got somebody to go out with you a second time. Those are the moments you want to stack in your head before you get nerves up, because the goal is not to get rid of those butterflies in your stomach, but to get the butterflies to fly in formation. And the best way to do that is to stack your moments of certainty so you're in control of what you're putting in your head, not the fear thoughts of it. So if we keep looking at that, any comments on that, Glenn, about confidence and things I've worked with you on? Because we've talked about your own speaking.
Hand gestures. Sorry, Assam.
Oh, somebody have a question? Comment?
Yeah, you want to know about hand gestures? How important?
Oh, hand gestures. Yes. Especially if you're on a camera. Make sure you make your hand gestures here and not down here.
Yeah.
Is it a sign of confidence using hand gestures?
Yes, it actually gets the nervous energy out of your stomach and into the room.
Mm-hmm.
So make gestures that make sense, that tell a story, not just gesturing for gesturing purposes when you want to emphasize something. Does that help?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great.
Very true.
So, you know, you have to have the right mindset before you tell a story. And so you want to stack your moments of confidence and make sure that you remember another time you told a story where it really landed and people remembered it, especially when you're trying out a new story. So everyone does have a story. And the problem is a lot of people panic and think they don't. And, you know, so I encourage people to think about this. What happened to you in your life where you learned a lesson? Or what's a big mistake you made and you learned a lesson? That's two huge sources of telling your story. And this is one of Glenn's masterpieces, in my humble opinion. Because what I do is this concept of a case study has been around for decades, where salespeople will go in and present, here's another client we helped, and here's the facts and the figures. And I, again, tell people, that's not enough anymore. You need to turn a boring case study full of facts and figures into a compelling case story. Did everybody see that go from black and white to color? Yes, nod yes.
Yeah.
So that, when I'm giving this presentation and the visuals do that, what do you think happens to people's mind? They go, oh, Wizard of Oz. I want to be as engaging as, I don't want to be the black and white Kansas speaker or salesperson. I want to be all that excitement of something new. And we're on this yellow brick road journey together of telling an amazing case story. So Glenn, share with us what inspired you to do this. I just said, I want to give me some visuals on turning a case study into a case story. And look what he created, everybody.
Well, thank you. The original idea came from, there was a reference that you had to The Wizard of Oz earlier in the presentation. I took a segment out. It was the resolution part of telling a story. And so Dorothy was back home and telling everybody how you were here and you were here or you were there. And so that was kind of the inspiration. I thought, well, that's a story, right? And to start out with black and white. And then you mentioned earlier about the importance of a lot of the things that both of us that we do is it's kind of subliminal. People aren't really necessarily aware of it. So just even things turning from color to black and white, you have an emotional reaction to that, even if you may not be conscious of it.
Great. All right, we've got some questions in the chat here. Let's address them. Thanks, Paul. I'm glad you like that butterflies in formation. Moments of certainty, Marquis. So you write down 2 or 3 times when you knew you nailed it. Hopefully I gave you enough examples of what those moments of certainty are. And you put that in your head before you go present. And so that's what you want to be stacking your moments of certainty, almost like an air traffic controller when all the planes are flying has to, stack airplanes. You're stacking your moments of certainty with a feeling. I felt confident. I felt inspired. I felt exhilarated. Put all those feelings together the next time you have to do something outside of your comfort zone. So hopefully that answers your question. And Sonny wants to know, when he hears stories, how can we make our stories more trustworthy?
I love this question.
First of all, make them authentic. I tell the story of meeting Michael Phelps, and I'm happy to share that story as an example. But when I tell that story, I show a picture of me with Michael Phelps. I don't make people wonder going, did he really meet him? There's a picture of it. So the story about Michael Phelps is I was selling advertising for a high fashion magazine, and Speedo was in my territory, and they were coming out with a line of sportswear. And I said to them, would you consider advertising? And they go, no, we're going to run in a fitness magazine. I said, oh, but what if? Again, if you're taking notes, write down those 2 words. What if? It taps people into their right brain where the imagination lives. I said, well, what if we treated your sportswear like it was high fashion. And we could have a fashion show around a hotel pool, and you could invite Michael Phelps because he's on your payroll as a spokesperson. We get all kinds of press for it. They go, oh, we like that idea. They were intrigued enough to do it. And then I got to meet Michael Phelps. And as a former lifeguard, you can imagine what a thrill that was. So I went up to him and I said, Michael, everyone says you're such a successful swimmer because you've got these big feet like fins and your lung capacity. I'm guessing there's something else. And he said, yes, John. My coach said to me when I was young, Michael, are you willing to work out on Sundays? Yes, coach. We just got 52 more workouts a year than the competition. So what's the takeaway for you? What are you willing to do to be an Olympic level expert in your business that your competition is not willing to do? So that's a story, hopefully, that resonates with you, Sani, as something, I'm getting some applause here. That's an example of a good story that has some value and keeps it going. All right. So now we're going to go
I'd
back.
like to add on you mentioned the what if part. I think that
Yes.
is so critical when it comes to the creative process. That's a lot of what I do is in that area. I always think what if, and then the next half of that is, can I actually produce it and make it real?
Exactly. Now, what's interesting about all of this quarantine situation is, obviously there's a lot of impact that's not positive, but if you constantly look for opportunities, even when something seems really negative, you can find them. My client said to me, in addition to your talk on helping us become better storytellers so we win more new business, because we're really tired of coming in second place, we'd love it if you could train our people who only make sales calls in person how to be more effective on a Zoom call. So once again, I called up Glenn. I said, I need some new content, and you're just the person to help me create the visuals to go with it. And I thought I would give this as a nice surprise for everybody. Not only is it an example of Glenn's work, but also some amazing takeaways for your own Zoom video calls or whatever platform you're using. So again, anytime you tell a story, paint the picture, who, what, where, when, get us in the story. In this particular case, I said, for years, this has been the traditional way you make sales presentations and have meetings with people. You're calling on the doctor, you're with the vendor. But now that's reduced to being on a screen. So I'm going to pause there and have Glenn describe how he made that so transitional.
I had to find an image that actually had the people separated enough and ideally look like they could still be on screen and in person. So this was one of those times where I thought, what if? And I tried to figure out, like, okay, can I actually do this? It's fairly straightforward. There's a single transition and there's two layers. This image is an overlay that has the screen cut out, so I was able to just transition from one slide to the next with the same with one of the images the same, and without getting too granular, it's basically morphs an existing image into the shape of the following image. So this one just shrunk down a little bit, and there was an overlay of the screen on top of it.
But as a speaker, these kind of visuals really help me be more effective. And look how the details, like there's an iPhone and a coffee cup next to it that matches the whole color scheme of the black and white. Everything is so well designed, which then rubs off on my brand as a speaker. So the visuals must support you as a professional and not something you just try to throw together.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah,
I'm like so used to doing this, I don't think about all this thing. But yeah, then that's a good point. It's like I have to be very conscious of all the elements that I bring into an image.
Yep. And then this is the soundbite that they just loved. And again, if you're taking notes, write this one down. For casual conversations, obviously you don't have to do this. But if you're presenting to someone to hire you in any capacity or to buy from you, stand up and dress up. I put on a button shirt for everybody today. And I'm standing up because it changes my energy.
Yeah.
And this was the huge aha for this company. They said, not one of us, including the management, is standing up when we have calls with clients about hiring us or buying our product. We do it when we meet them. You know, they sit around a conference table, we get up and we present, and yet we aren't doing it on these calls. So thank you so much. Stand up and dress up. Again, another example of something memorable with a sound bite. That's what you want to do. Framing yourself. Okay. So put 3 fingers. Everybody can do this exercise now up on your head. And you can see that's the right distance from the top of your head to the top of the frame. Then you literally want to hold your arms up like this and say, yep, that's the right frame. Now cross your arms underneath your chest. And that's how you know the camera's at the right spot. Not below it, not above it. Because here's what happens when you don't frame yourself. You have these images of people looking down at you, and you want to be eye level. So if you have to put books under your computer, or you don't have a stand-up desk, whatever it is, whatever you need to do to be eye level with the camera so you don't do this. So Glenn, let's go back on those last 2 images. Frame yourself. We looked at all kinds of different frames, right? So it's not just, I just want everybody to get a sense of the thought and the effort and the creativity that goes into what's the best way to tell that story with a visual.
Yeah, people are showing people, it's very challenging because I try to be sensitive and not focus on any one particular person or body type or whatever, and you know, be sensitive to that, but also to illustrate the point. So I really tried to find images that were probably more exaggerated than others, but it gets the point across. And even like the frame image they had before was, I think we probably had 3 or 4 different frames. And it was like, I believe you told me one of the frames I had was too fancy.
Yeah.
Which was funny. So I had to pick out a few different ones. But yeah, this seemed to be the right one and the right tone without it being too distracting again. Yeah.
And then we obviously, you know, I actually took a screenshot of somebody doing the wrong thing. And then you found other people doing it. It's sad to see what a common problem it is. So then we go, let me just see if there's any comments on this really quick in the chat. Nope, so far so good. Okay, great. So then the next problem is lighting. Do not sit in front of a window. You'll be in the dark. Or don't sit like you're in the witness protection program and see, you know, we're just sort of in the shadows. We can kind of see you. I literally have a side light here next to me. And I believe Glenn does as well.
I have a few.
Yes.
I use ring lights, and I'm always experimenting, but I have one right in front of right behind the camera. And I've got a couple over here using some, you know, for shading. It adds depth. This is all real, and I'm standing. And
right, same with me. This is obviously real because there's a lot of if you can't make gestures if you're in front of the fake backgrounds without your hands disappearing. So that's why it's important to make sure you have that. And then you know, I believe this is one of the earlier questions. What about the body language? So body language in person is very important, but even more so in a Zoom call. Why? Because our eyes want to see something moving. If it's not that stopwatch that Glenn did at the beginning, then it has to be your hands making a gesture to get people to be pulled in. Now, ironically, this whole concept of, you know, getting in the Zen moment and being 100% present, if you're not 100% present, there's no way the clients are going to be. So I just want to talk about the concept here of, write down in the chat, if you would, for me, one thing you've gotten from this masterclass so far that you might have a question of, or just one of the things you took notes on that we can talk about, because then we'll continue here. Let's see. Imagine if, yes, what if, or imagine. I also start sentences with picture this. So it taps into our right side of our brain going, oh, we're going to, without saying, I'm going to tell you a story now, say, picture this, or imagine, or what if. Camera at eye level and standing, great. Stacking your moments of certainty, Neil says, love it. And continuing the visual and the verbal story, that there's some continuity, that they're working together and enhancing each other. And it's consistent with your brand and your story. Love it, guys. And Whitman, thank you very much. All right.
Yeah, I just want to say, per Harry's comment, it's so true to have that the continuity, and slides aren't a crutch, and they shouldn't be read, as we mentioned before. It's really
Right.
important that I think a lot of people see presentation slides as being something that is like unnecessary, or is there only to read. They're there to enhance. It
Yeah.
is there to enhance the speaker and your message.
And Harak says,
Hey, can I make a comment?
yes, who's this?
And again,
Harry?
thank you
Yes.
guys,
Hey, Harry.
so much for what you do. It's good to see you. And of course, I've been following both of your work for a long time. I've seen you speak, and I've had the pleasure of working with both of you professionally.
Yeah.
So I just want to add to this. You guys always deliver such gold in terms of the information, but once I think people work with you on a specific message, you know what I mean, and it's customized, that's when you really see all this come together. And so I think that's an important point to make, that you can watch all the books and read all the material and do this, but once you have your own message and your own story to deliver, that's where I think everything you're teaching is so important. And I think that's, I don't know what point I'm trying to make, other than that's what I mean by making sure that the verbal, the physical presentation, like the TED Talks, the visuals that you do, Glenn, getting all of that into your brand is, I think what's extremely valuable. So thank you both for what you're doing and
Thanks, Harry.
what you've done for me personally. So.
Nice. Well, and Harak wrote that people need to see themselves in your story is a big takeaway. And Neil went on to say that that's what he does in his own webinars. Because again, when you are a great storyteller, people see themselves in that story. They want to go on the journey with you. Then you have a new tool in your toolbox. You're not trying to hammer and force people to buy. You simply say, does that sound like the kind of journey you'd like to go on? And as Harry said, it's very customized to all of that. So I just want to
Thanks, Harry.
transition into some of the problems that get solved by telling a good story. So let's see if I can hit the share button again. She's able to see this, Glenn?
Yes.
Got it. So I've come up with this method from speaking to literally thousands of salespeople at different companies about there's got to be a way to get off this self-esteem roller coaster where we only feel good about ourselves if our numbers are up and bad about ourselves if our numbers are down. And so how can we improve our closing ratio and not get burnt out? And I'm telling you, this has worked for me and it's worked for many other people. And we all have to sell ourselves in one capacity or another, is when you learn this storytelling method, you're going to literally stop coming in second place. And I had an architecture firm say to me, man, we get in the final 3 and we are just so tired of coming in second place. Can you help us? And I said, well, what are you doing in your chance to present? Are you telling stories? No, we're just giving out information and hoping that's what causes us to win. And once they started this one step of turning these boring case studies, as we saw the visual black and white, into a compelling case story where people saw themselves in that story, they said, oh my God, I want to go on that journey with you. And I'm going to tell you the story now that caused Gensler, the world's largest architecture firm, to win $1 billion project, the biggest amount I've ever worked on, an event, to renovate the Pittsburgh airport. It was between Gensler and 2 other firms, and the client said, we're going to hire the people we like the most. Guess what? I worked with you for 6 years. And they said, oh my God, get John in here. We don't know, how do we make ourselves likable? We just show designs and hope that does it. So they had some great pictures for the case study of what they'd done for another airport, but there was no story and certainly no emotional connection. So here's the story. Imagine I'm Gensler telling the story to the Pittsburgh airport people. 2 years ago, JetBlue brought us in to renovate the terminal at JFK. During that 3-year process, one of the challenges we had was we had to rip off all the floors in the middle of the night from 9 o'clock at night till 9 in the morning so that we would not disturb the retail revenue. So we had all our vendors on call all night because we knew all the kinds of things that could go wrong in previous projects, and we were ready for them. And sure enough, at 2 in the morning, a fuse blew. That vendor we had on call got there in 20 minutes, and we fixed the problem, and at 8:59, the last tile went down, and all the stores opened on time. And now a year later, sales are up 15% because we designed a place that attracts people and keeps them shopping longer. Now, the people at Pittsburgh said, that's exactly what we want. We want to have that kind of an outcome. So the elements to that story are exposition. I described the, if you're in the picture, you know it's JFK at JetBlue. The problem, see the difference between, if Gensler got up there and said, oh, we use critical thinking to anticipate problems, they didn't have to say that. They showed they did it by having the vendors on call. And then to Asim, your point earlier about gestures, hopefully you saw this. I said at 8:59, the last tile went down. See how the gesture contributes to the story? And the gesture is here, not here, not blocking my face. All those subtle things to being a good storyteller. And then the resolution to that story is that sales are up 15% a year later because of the design. And a lot of people don't connect those dots. The design, whether it's Glenn's expertise on a slide or the design of a space, impacts storytelling, which impacts revenue, which impacts people's experience. So I've created this online course to help people learn how to be a master storyteller who can't hear me speak in front of a big crowd or may not just want to do this at their own pace. And the other big problem is people say, oh, can you come in and teach our people how to be persuasive, not pushy? Because nobody wants to be pushy. So that's the joy of what storytelling does. It allows you to tell stories that make you magnetic and pull you in instead of pushing out a bunch of information. So if, you know, I was fortunate enough through some mutual friend, Mark Goldson, who introduced me to Cal Fussman and Larry King, and I was on Larry King's show with them talking about storytelling. And you can be sure I did my homework and found out what Larry's King's story of origin is. And he got his big break meeting Frank Sinatra. And on the car ride from breakfast to the studio, I said to him, I love that story of, you know, how you got to interview Frank Sinatra and you weren't famous yet. And that was your big break. He goes, that was a good night. So I knew it was safe to bring that up on air. When he said, John, what makes a good story, as he's holding up my book? And I said, well, Larry, would you mind sharing your story of how you got your big break with Frank Sinatra? And then we can break it down. Looking back on that, it was unplanned. I don't know where I got the guts to answer Larry King's question with a question and ask him to tell the story, except I knew he liked telling that story. So he said, yeah, down in Florida, I just have a radio show. And I was friends with Jackie Gleason. And Jackie Gleason asked me this question, what's impossible in your business? Now think about that so many years ago. What a great question for all of us to ask ourselves. What's impossible in our business? And so Larry King said, well, interviewing Frank Sinatra, his son just got kidnapped and he's not doing any interviews. He's mad at the media for insinuating it was because of mob connections. So Jackie Gleason said, I filled into him one time doing my comedy act when he had laryngitis. He owes me a favor. I'll ask him to do this for you. And Larry's like, what? Are you kidding me? And sure enough, he did. And they hit it off. And so much so during the interview that Frank Sinatra invited Larry King that night to bring a date and come hear him sing at the Copacabana for free at the dinner right by the the table right by the stage. And Larry's like, oh man, whatever woman I bring, she's going to be so impressed. And sure enough, it was a wonderful evening. And this is before people had credit cards and there were no ATMs or anything. And Larry didn't have a lot of money. So, but he came across like a big shot that night because everything was comped. So they're driving back to her place and she's like, stop at this place and pick up some coffee for tomorrow morning. Well, he was so embarrassed he didn't have any cash and didn't want to ruin the whole mood of the evening. So he walks into the store, comes back out, and she's like, they're out of coffee? He goes, no, they couldn't break 100. What a great resolution to that story.
Smart.
So we went through the exposition. We know what's happening. We know the problem. He's out of money. We know the solution. And then the resolution is what makes that so successful. So this concept, Gensler now calls me their interview guru when they have to go and interview for new projects. And it's all because of the storytelling. And this, food company called Sugar Mountain, once they started telling their story of origin and how much love and thought goes into creating their products, then it's no longer pushing to get it on the shelf. And then this is the big problem. I was working with an executive search firm, and they said, when we go and present against our competitors, we walk out of the room and, they forget what we said. It all sounds the same. And so we hope we can go last. And I'm like, well, that's not a strategy. You can control the order you present. Whoever tells the best story is going to be memorable. And they're like, oh my God, light bulb moment. You're hired. Teach us how to tell case stories so we don't have to worry about what order we're in. And this concept of, especially in healthcare, they're trying to talk, these salespeople are trying to talk to the doctors in between surgeries, and they go, oh, I feel like an annoying pest. And I said, would you like to learn how to feel like a welcome guest? Oh my God, yes, please. What do I do? I said, Bob was always, trying to pitch something to the doctor between surgeries, and the doctor's like, oh, stop pestering me. Meanwhile, Sue said, hey doc, I've got this amazing story of another doctor I just helped at another hospital, and how he was able to, keep his energy up between surgeries. Would you like to hear that story? Oh my God, yes. Turns out people always have time for a good story. And then this concept of, I feel invisible to people. And, how do I develop rapport fast? A common problem. I work with Redfin, the tech real estate company. I'm helping those people figure out how to turn somebody who's angry into somebody who feels heard through the empathy skills that you learn in this course. And then this whole concept of, getting out of the friend zone at work, is what this, Phoenix controls we're doing. So this course has all these wonderful modules, are about 10, 15 minutes each. And it's like watching a Netflix movie. The visuals and the cinematography that I have put into this makes it so enjoyable. And, one of our friends, Rob Angel, is the creator of Pictionary. He took the course to learn how to tell better stories for his talk and his interviews. And Asim, who's on this call, has taken the course, and I worked with him. So Asim, if you want to take yourself off mute for a second and just share with people your experience of it, it would be great.
My experience on it is it actually changed my whole perspective on how I looked at how I even enter a meeting and how I talk, and even how I write down my business plan. I literally redid my whole business planning because of this.
Wow.
And, yeah. And it's all, maybe by next week, it should all be done.
Fantastic.
And I made use of some friends to help with certain parts too.
Nice. Yeah. That's great.
Experts.
If I could jump in, John,
Please.
I would, I have to make sure I say this because this is super important. You and I working together. I am so grateful you're offering this, because as part of our process of what we do for designing presentations, we have three specific areas that we focus on. And the first one is messaging, which is the storytelling, which is absolutely making sure that that is clear, concise, and compelling, which are things that I've learned from you as my mentor. And so when I have a new client and they haven't quite got that part worked out, it's almost required required that they contact you and connect with you. The project that we work on have a time set aside for them to meet with you, but the fact that you're offering the course is going to help enhance that even more, so more and more people have access to this, because you are the master storyteller, and it has absolutely been a huge bonus to our process in making what I do that much more effective. Because without the story, without getting the messaging and all of that first kind of phase of the project together, no matter what visuals I do, if the message isn't there to begin with, it's not going to be as effective. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. It's so true. So I've created these bonuses where I have a private Facebook group for anybody who gets the course today, where for the next 10 weeks, you'll be in a private Facebook group with me. You'll be able to practice your stories, practice your pitches, and get real-time feedback. And in between the 1 hour group call, you can post questions that I'll answer. And obviously I'll send you a signed copy of my book. And we're going to have a virtual contest to see who promotes the course the most will be able to get on my podcast. And for, I've created a guarantee. I so much believe in this. I'm going to take all the risk away from you. We would look at how many sales you're currently closing. And if you don't close 10% more after 60 days, I'm willing to give you your money back. So I've priced this at a level that's way under what the market says, according to Billy, but I wanted as many people as possible to have access to it. So it's only $497, and it'll be like that for another 2 months. And then if anybody signs up today with it, you're going to get a bonus hour with me that you can, Harry was referring to, and that Asim has done and Rob Angel has done, over and above. And that 1 hour with me is normally $500 an hour. So after you go through the course, I will work with you one-on-one for a whole hour, and you'll still get access for 10 weeks in the private Facebook group. So I see Harak has said that he's interested in doing that. Glenn, do you want to post in the chat the link for people to sign up and enroll today?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Which would be terrific. And Harak, if I don't have your email, oh, that $500 is worth 5 million. Oh, that's so kind to see. I so appreciate that. Are there any other questions as we wrap up this master course in helping any of you become better storytellers and use the visuals that you're, paint that picture verbally, and then if you're actually making a presentation, use it, as you can see, Glenn's expertise coming together with all that. So I think Glenn has posted the link. There you go. Yep. So go in the chat room, cut and paste that link, and we will know that you saw this webinar, and you'll get the free 1 hour with me on top of getting all the content. And there's actually little quizzes to take that are meant to be fun. And at the end, you get a little certificate that says you're a revenue rock star. So you're going to enjoy the process and be able to show that to your friends and make them jealous. Any other questions before we sign off for the next few minutes? I'm happy to stay on and post it in the chat, or if you want to take yourself off mute, if it's a longer question than just something in a chat. Anything?
I have a question, but I don't know if it's fully related. It's about storytelling.
Go for it.
Hey, Neil.
Hey, Glenn. Love your content. I just realized my face was up like this as I was going through the chat thing.
It's like the movie Tootsie. Like, back up, not so fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. You've seen my face like this.
That's okay. The accent makes up for it. We got another Brit.
Okay,
we have another Brit on the line, Matthew Sullivan. So you guys speak and everybody leans in, so it's fine.
Yeah. I'm about to do a live on EMFs, because I've been in the EMF space, electromagnetic radiation, inspired by a post in our WhatsApp group on 5G. Mm-hmm. So, and yesterday I shared on Facebook something I'm massively in support of. That's something that Trump did yesterday. I haven't said I love Trump. I said I'm in support of something he's done.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how many people have come back and said, and like personally attacked me. So being the storyteller,
yes.
How would you say to discern between being in alignment with an action someone's taken and not attaching that to a character?
Oh, got it. Well, I would use the example that in any good book or movie or TV show, the character always has some positive attributes and some negative attributes. Like nobody's perfect and nobody's all evil for the most part. Any of those extreme examples are not terribly interesting. So
yeah,
also the cliche of don't shoot the messenger, and not and also the premise is as a client of yours, I know you are so helpful with this, is it's not all or nothing. It's not black and white, and get comfortable with shades of gray. And I talk about in the course to let go of needing to be a perfectionist. And what that does is it puts so much pressure on us to be perfect all the time. And when we relax into being a progressionist, where we celebrate our progress. So, for example, the last story I'm going to leave you with, you're climbing Mount Everest, you're halfway up. You have a choice. You can look back down and go, wow, look how much progress we made. We were halfway up. Or you can look up and go, oh, look how much further I have to go. It's your choice.
Yeah, right.
Are you, and then if it's not perfect, one little thing goes wrong in the presentation, you focus on that as opposed to all the things that did. And it's like, you're helping, you know, people with their nutrition and their eating and their mindset and all. It's like, it's about progression. Be a progressionist, let go of being a perfectionist. Hopefully that helps you.
Yeah, thank you.
It's very true.
Yeah. And for some reason, I like to do this live rather than pre-recorded, because something, and I want, as a speaker, John, do you want, you must relate to the idea of being in flow when you're on stage.
Correct. Yes. And luckily the flow still happens virtually.
Yeah. So, and almost if it's pre-planned too much, it can even come across as pre-planned rather than maybe having a little outline in the head, but allowing it to come through.
Yeah. So let me give you a tip on that. I've worked with a lot of people who are afraid of coming across robotic, which is what I heard you saying. If I pre-plant every word I'm going to say, it's going to be too memorized. There won't be any spontaneity to it, correct? And so the key here is make sure you have a really great opening and a really great closing and 3 points you want to cover, and trust that those 3 points you've practiced enough that you can have a little bit of spontaneity in it. But really make sure your opening and your closing are nailed. And that's the kind of thing we'll be working on in the private Facebook group for the people who enroll in the course.
I like that. I like that 3 points. It's nice, because I often have like a crib sheet of 20 things, and I'm just like,
no, yeah. Tell us what you're gonna. 3 things. That's part of design, right, Glenn? It's a big part of design.
Very much.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Well, if
thank you, John, and thank you, Glenn.
If you want, again, a free PDF, text the word pitch, PITCH, to 66866. Put that in the chat here. And James, thanks for coming. And if you know anybody else that might benefit from this course and want to have a 15-minute chat with me, please reach out to me. And I'll put my email in here as well. Thanks, everybody.
I think, John, you sent it to me.
Oh, whoops. Let me fix that.
It's okay. I'll.
Here's my email. Whoops. Here's my email. It's just my name, John, at johnlivesay.com. And text the word pitch to 66866. There you go. And you get the free PDF. And look forward to having you in the class, Harak, and anybody else that joins as well. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.